Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of this project for giving me the opportunity to introduce you with the results of many years of research on the famous Bilsk Hillfort located in the northern Black Sea region. Should note that Hillfort we used as synonym as for words settlement, city site, городище, or oppidum. In my report, I would like to share with the results of the study of Greek ceramics, which was found at this settlement. Uh, I must say at once that the Bilsk settlement is located on the territory of modern Ukraine, where the largest river is the Dnipro. The river is the border of two areas, the right or western bank and the left or eastern bank. Currently, about 500 unfortified settlements and about 50 hillforts of early Iron Age are known in this territory. And we could say that the Bilsk Hillfort is an ordinary settlement of the early Iron Age. There are hundreds of such settlements. However, even at the first glance, it has significant differences from other monuments. First of all, its size. This is the largest settlement of all known in Europe this period. So, where is the Bilsk city site located? It is located on the territory of the Dnipro Forest-Steppe left bank, between two larger rivers, the Vorskla and Psel, a tributary of the Psel. Both rivers flow in the Dnipro. The settlement is the 5,000 hectares. The length of the defense line is 35 kilometers. At present, the modern village of Bilsk, with population of about 1,000 inhabitants, is located in the center of the settlement. So far, eastern ramparts and ditches have been well preserved. The height of the shafts reaches 9 meters, and the depth of the ditches is 5 meters. They are visible even on Google Maps. The settlement consists of three fortifications, Western or Західне, Eastern or Scythian, and Kuzemin, united by a common shaft, more than 35 kilometers long. At present, no other settlements with a similar structure are known. As a rule, they consist of one fortification and have several rows of ramparts and ditches. To the west of the settlements is a huge burial ground consisting of hundreds and maybe even thousands of burial mounds. Analogies to such a phenomenon are also practically unknown. As a rule, if mounds are located near the settlement, there are several dozen mounds. Their number is not measured in hundreds. The Bilsk Hillfort is only settlement that has existed for 4 centuries. It has been studied much better than other. For many years of archaeological excavation, more than 30,000 square meters have been unearthed. Bilsk is a hillfort where various craft workshops, bright religious complexes, public buildings, temples are open, and a clear layout has been traced. There is no such thing anywhere. The Bilsk Gorodicha is the one settlement of Scythia that managed to establish trade exchange with the Greek policies as early as 7th century BC and maintained trade relations until 4th century BC. The monument is interesting because in its different parts lived tribes that different in cultural religion traditionals, belonging to different ethnic groups. Today, the Bilsk city site is the most informative monument for studying all aspects of life of the population in Europe and of early Iron Age. However, what is still remarkable about this monument, even now its size is amazing. For example, the area of only western fortification is 95 hectares. For comparison, the area of Olbia Pontica is 50 hectares. Note that the main life proceeds of two of them, western and eastern fortification. The first archaeological excavation were carried out by Vasil Goryatsev. For a month of work, he drew up a plan of the settlement, carried out excavation on 9 ash hills and explored area about 1,000 square meters. Unearthed 21 barrows, made shaft cuts. In the second half of the early 21st century, the settlement was explored by Boris Yakov, Alla Morozenko, Petro Gavich, Alexander Sopronenko, Rina Kulatova, Denis Rechka. From the 1992 to 2006, a joint Ukrainian-German archaeological expedition worked on the settlement. It can be noted that the Renata Rolli, an employer of the Institute of Archaeology of the University of Hamburg, was on the German side. Since 2014, an expedition on the historical and cultural reserve Bilsk has been worked at the settlement. The longest systematic and large-scale excavation at this settlement were carried out by Boris Shemko. He studied the settlement for 35 years. We can say with certainty that it was thanks to his excavations that the Bilsk Hillfort gained such fame. On the western fortification, he explored defense structures, separate ash hills. On the Bilsk necropolises, he unearthed 25 burial mounds, barrows. On the eastern fortification, he explored 50,000 square meters area. According to the results of his excavation, a book was written, Bilsk's Settlement, the City of Hello. Since 1987, the settlement has been studied by an expedition led by Irina Shemko. Since 2005, Stanislav Zadnikov has been involved in the study of the settlement. During this time, 8 ash hills of the western fortification were explored and 15 mounds were excavated in the Skorobor necropolises. Several excavations were laid in fortified settlements and work continued in the eastern fortification. At present, this settlement has the largest explored area on a Scythian monument in Eastern Europe, more than 30,000 square meters. Hundreds of archaeological complexes has been discovered here. Household pits, residential building, temples, various workshops, bronze casting, bone carving, iron making, pottery production, thousands of fragments of mold ceramics, whole vessels, iron, bronze, bone, clay items. Greek imports are quite common, gold items, glass beads, as well as fragments of pottery, transport, amphora, and tableware. It should be noted that the first settlements in the Dnipro eastern bank left Forest-Steppe were founded by migrants from the western bank. Dnipro in the second half of the 8th century. Thanks to many years of excavation and recorded stratigraphy, we were able to identify 4 main periods in the existence of the settlement. The first period is the Bilsk I, the second half of the 8th century to the first half of 7th century BC. At this time, the first settlers come from the territory from the right bank of the Dnipro and establish a settlement on the territory of the western fortification. At first, it was a not fortified settlement. Period Bielsk II, the middle of the 7th to second quarter of the 6th century BC. At this time, the boundaries of the settlement increase significantly. This is the time of the first contacts of the local population with Greek centers. On the eastern fortification, these horizons are absent. Period Bilsk III, second half of the 6th to the first half 5th century BC, the heyday of the Bilsk settlement. At this period, the borders of the settlement expanded significantly. New settlements appeared, and one of the caps on the right bank of the Vorskla River. The eastern fortification was also populated. At this time, the defense structures of the western and eastern fortification appear, which are united by one shaft. Favorable geographical position established trade relations with the Greek policies as well as developed craft, contributed to the gradual development of the settlement of farmers and artisans into a large urban center. Bilsk period 4, second half of the 5th to 4th century BC. Life at this time is concentrated within the eastern fortification and its environs. It becomes a major economic, political, and commercial center of the Forest-Steppe Scythia, well known to the steppe tribes of ancient Greeks. Many interesting findings have been made thanks to long-term excavation at the Bilsk settlement. It was only settlement in the Forest-Steppe region where device culture and trade influence and connections can be traced. This influence include influence from the Central Europe, from the Eastern, Central and Western Asia, and influence from the South, contacts with Greeks. The influence of Central Europe can be traced in the form of items directly brought to the settlement, such as sword, or in the ideas brought to settles, such as the shape of iron axes, pins, and earrings, as well as the shapes and ornamentation of molded pottery. Eastern influence includes the discovery of a copper cauldron made in workshop in the Caucasus, objects decorated in Scythian animals, styles, a horse bridle, and even a pendant in the shape of ancient scarab. These objects could have been brought to the settlement by nomads. The settlement has had strong, stable trade links with Greek cities of the northern Black Sea region. These cities supplies wine in amphora, ceremonial tableware, various jewelry, glass beads. Currently, more than 7,000 fragments of Greek-made pottery have been found on the site. Most of them are the walls of transport amphoras. However, 870 fragments of rims and more than 300 foods were found. 25 transport amphoras were found. Tableware is represented by 375 fragments of vessels and 38 vessels. For the first time, Greek ceramics began to arrive at the Bilsk settlement in third quarter of the 7th century BC. Early examples of tableware found on the territory of Western fortification. The feature of the Western fortification is the presence of ash mounds or ash hills. It is a place where ashes have been dumped for a long time. In addition, household water was thrown into the ash mound. Fragments of ceramics and sacrifices were made. The traditional of pouring ash hills is associated with the cult of hearth. The earliest transport amphora in the settlement were found only in the western fortification, and they appear in the third quarter of the 7th century BC. On the 252 fragments of Greek wine amphoras, the first place is occupied by the Clazomenian transport amphora of the Colomok type, 38%. It terms quantity, 15%. Amphoras of Lesbos production are in the second place. The vessels have grey clay. It has established that tableware in the archaic period from the Bilsk Hillfort belongs to the production of Eastern Greek centers. The tableware of this period is represented by only 6 types of fins, closed forms, enochoia, amphora, calyx, and open forms, calyx, bowls, plates, which are used only in the feast. We have taken into account 48 fragments of vessels from the second half of the 7th to the first half of the 6th century BC. Early types of South-Ionian archaic tableware include fragments of Oinachoia from the ash hills 5, 10, and 13 in western Bilsk. They belong to the final stage of the Middle Wild Goat I style, or to the end of the period Sia Ionian Archaic 1b. One of the fragments there characteristic images of goats, dogs combined with an ornamental belt in the form of 8 shaped braid with filling elements, swastikas, rhombuses, handing triangles, quadruple rosettes. A significant number of pieces are fragments of Einochoe made in the style of Middle Wild Goa II or period source Ionian Archaician 1C. North Ionian imports are represented by closed forms, Einochoe stable amphoras, and open, calyx plates. Plates decorated with rays and concentric circles. From the Ash Hill 5 of the western fortification, there are two fragments of bowls, rare for the Forest-Steppe, with the image of a bird handing triangles outlining rhombuses limited by vertical rays. In our opinion, they should be attributed to 615 centuries BC. Yes, BC. At the first half of the 6th century, to the majority represented by North Ionian imports. It is represented by closed oinochoes, table amphora forms, and open calyx plates vessels. Plates are decorated with rays and concentric circles. Fragments of the table vessels depicted god with an elongated body, attributed to the Middle Wild God II style, or South Ionian Archaician 1D period. As a rule, such fragments belong to the first half of the 6th century BC. They are also known fins of calyx, or cups of Ionian production. In the burial ground of Scorbir, a plate of Northern Ionian production was found with meander image belonging to the age. Ionian ceramics of the Ficellura style are singled out separately. Images of rays have been preserved on the fragments, a fragment of the wall of closed vessel with a lunar ornament, which was discovered during the study of Ash-Hill's 10, can be considered a rare find. Thus, at present, thanks to the excavation at the Bilsk settlement, we have fragments that represented by different styles, different forms, and we have complete chronological column from the middle of the 7th century until middle of the 6th century BC. At the end of the 7th, beginning to the 6th century BC, the range of contained amphora is expanding. Wine also continues to flow in transport amphora from Clazomenes and Lesbos. At this time, vessels produced in Miletus and Chios appear. From the first half of the 6th century BC, red clay vessels of the Lesbos production appear on the settlement. Amphoras of Samos are rare. We can confidently say that the first contacts the inhabitants of the Bilsk Hillfort with the Greeks were established in the third quarter of the 7th century BC, a graduated development into permanent and well-established trade and exchange relations. At the same time, it is important to note the fact that in the previous chronological horizons, objects of Greek imports were not recorded, which excluded to existence of pre-colonization trade exchange on the Gorodisha. In the second half of the 7th to the first quarter of the 6th century BC, the trade exchange of population of the Bilsk settlement was carried out only with Berzal. This is evidenced by the fins of Greek ceramics and intermediate points, Matronino, Hillfort, Jabotin settlement, Baltishka barrow, and settlements in the branches of this road, Trechtimir of Hillfort, in the likely direction to Bilsk. At the same time, their absence is noticeable on other roads, for example, from the Taganrog settlements on Vorskla, as well as along to the Siversky Donets and Don. In our opinion, the land road served as the main way to deliver goods of the Forest-Steppe. The subject of trade exchange was tableware only from certain settings of production, southern and northern Ionia, and contained ceramics from almost all centers that came to the North Black Sea region, Chios, Clazomene, Miletus, Lesbos. It should be noted that in the second half of the 7th to first half of the 6th century BC, the main point of the left bank of the Dnipro, where Greek imports came, was Bilsk, which emphasizes its special importance among other settlements of the time. Further to the east and north, Greek imports of this time are not known, with the exception of burial complexes in which amphora could have come as a result of trade already with the Bilsk settlement. Starting from the second quarter of the 6th century, Olbia Pontica occupies and leading place in trade and exchange processes. In the third quarter of the 6th century BC, the situation in the Bilsk settlement is changing. A settlement appears on the site of the eastern fortification. A number of unfortified settlements appeared inside the fortification. Life on the western fortification continued until the middle of the 5th century BC. Thus, the end of the first half the 5th century BC, the time of existence of a single complex of the Bilsk settlement, united by one rampart, 35 kilometers. It has been established that starting from the 6th century BC, the volume of Greek imports of the settlement is gradually increasing. In the middle of the 6th to 5th century, Bilsk continued to receive amphoras with the wine of Chios, Klazomen, and Lesbos. By the beginning of the 5th century, the number of Greek amphoras decreasing significantly, but the supply of red clay amphoras increasing, which continued until the middle of the 5th century BC. The revival of Milesia and Attic amphoras, the Agora type or Gabrose amphora, will be completed in the third quarter of the 6th century BC. During this period, the middle of the 6th to 4th century BC, products of the new centers appeared. For example, its tails, the so-called Proto-Scythian amphoras, Menda and Tassos. The first we imported for almost a century, from the middle of the 6th century to the second quarter of the 5th century BC. In the layers of the third quarter of the 5th century, they no longer meet. Starting from the end of the 6th century BC, the settlement and its surrounding receive imports from Tassos until the middle to the end of the 5th century BC. It occupies a major position in the market. From the middle of the 6th century BC, tableware produced by Attica appears on the market. In the second half of the century, this center occupies the main positions. Tableware from Attica has been found in almost all settlements of the Bilsk Hillfort, and it's represented by kilix, bowls, thiphos, table amphora, jugs, orbs, black glazed cups, as well as fragments of four craters found in Ash Hill number 5 on the western fortification. The localization of these fragments within one Ash Hill suggests that the estate of a rather wealthy family was located here. Fragments of amphoras come from excavation at the eastern fortification. One of them belongs to St. Valentine painter. Tableware from Chios is represented by fragments of Olpes which were found in the western and eastern fortification and in the settlement Tsarina Mogila, starting from the middle of the 6th century BC. Ionian production includes a small amount Greek tableware. It is represented by fragments of kilix, jugs, lekyphos, and amphora. Fragments of table amphora decorated with stripes and brown or lead plaque were found on the western fortification. Only from the eastern fortification do fragments of Pasomanian table amphora. Fragments of Laconian, Kilix, and Corinthian scyphos come from. Practically at all settlements, as well as in Mount number 1 of the Perishepina burial ground, fragments of grey clay table vessels It's a jugs, rhinoceros bowls of Albion productions were found. Such unit seals first appear of the settlements in the second half of the 6th century BC. The distribution of Greek ceramics by layers and complexes based on the data stratigraphy and settlements and analysis of Greek material from cultural horizons and relation complex, as well as mapping of fins and framework for the receipt of products in contained amphoras of some production centers has been specified. Here you can see a diagram of distribution contained ceramics by centers in the second half of the 6th to the third of the 5th century BC in the Bilsk settlement. The most common vessels is Clazomenian amphora is 23%, Theos or Protostasion amphora 21%, and Chios amphoras is 22%. Greek ceramics at the least last quarter of the 5th to 4th century BC, which refers to the last period of the existence of the Gorodice. This pottery is represented only by finds from the excavation of eastern fortification and burial mound. It should be emphasized that the largest collection of Greek ceramics of the 4th century BC comes from the Bilsk Hillfort, from known in the expanses of Forest-Steppe. An assortment of ceramic contained that come to the Forest-Steppe, including Bilsk, at the end of the 5th, beginning of the 4th century BC, changes. New export centers appear: Heraclea, Knidos, Sinope, Piparet, Kos, Rhodes. Import of heroes by the beginning of the 4th century BC gradually dies away in the last of the 4th century BC. It represented by single copies. Unlike some other centers, Tasian or Mende wines continue to arrive at the site during this period. So the vessels of the second half of the 5th to beginning of the 4th century BC make up 15 and 16% of all contained ceramics of the end of the 5th, 4th century BC. In the 4th century BC, the number of Tassian and Mende amphora are significantly reduced to 4%. Among all contained vessels of the 4th century BC, the market centers found of the settlements are dominated by Heraclean amphora. 18% of all contained ceramics of the 4th century BC. Several branded spices were found. Quite of new fragments of Nidian or Soloha 1 with the mushroom-shaped rim, 13%, and Piparetian Soloha 2 amphoras 8% have been recorded. In other areas of the Forest-Steppe, the latter are quite rarely. Only one vessel was found on the Seversky Donets River basin, and amphora from the center are also rare in dried bank of Dnipro. Meanwhile, such amphora are quite often found in the steppe Scythian burial mounds, including in the elite royal barrels. In the 4th century BC, the largest amount of Greek tableware at the Bilsk settlement is represented by Attic ceramics. In total, we currently know 122 fragments and 10 archaeological forms. It has been established that all types of tableware known of the steppe and Forest-Steppe were represented at the Bilsk Hillfort in the 4th century BC. Several groups have been identified among them. The first including drinking vessels, amphoras, thiphos, and kylix. They rank the first in quantity. Only one complete amphoras-shaped kylix was found in a rich double burial in Barrow Group Bilsk B, within the great fortification of Bilsk settlement. Another group includes vessels of identical shape, bowls, cups, and salters. Some of these could have been used for drinking. As Elena Fialka correctly noted, among all tableware, these shapes used for feasting predominate, while others remain rare. The third group consists of a single type of vessels intended for serving wine or water, pelix, jugs, mugs, and asks. Interestingly, of all the settlements in the Forest-Steppe, there is are known only in Bilsk. The fourth group includes toilet vessels or for aromatic oils, lekythos, which are recorded only in burials. The fifth group included vessels for washing mortars. This type of Greek unisits, rare for Forest-Steppe monuments, is known so far only in Bilsk settlements and it's the Scythian Mogila Barrow near Motonina Hillfort in Dnipro Red Bend. The sixth group represented by only one fin of the Scythia, it's a fish plate. The importance of unixes of this find is emphasized by the fact that the one type of plate is purely Greek culture element, not typically for the culture for barbarian world. With fairly well established in the 4th century BC trade relation with the Greek cities of the northern Black Sea region, Greek dishes were quite expensive and were distributed amongst the wealthy parts of the population, remaining a luxury item, prestige, and an indicator of the high social status of the owner. It was not available to the general public. This is evidenced by the materials of the excavation of the eastern fortification and burial grounds of the Bilsk settlement. The grave gods of this time include prestigious Greek tableware, lekythos, which when the decreased was buried was usually placed instead of molded vessels. At the same time, we know that trade relations between the Hellenes and the barbarian tribes of the Scythian time, first of all, were penniless and had an exchange character. During the entire period of research, 8 Greek coins produced by Olbia, Pantikapaean, and Chersonesus were found at the Bilsk city. In our opinion, the finds of Greek coins, lamps, and fish plate, a measuring ruler, testify to the possibility of a short stay of the Hellenes, most likely merchants in Bilsk settlement. Thus, thanks to the study of Greek ceramics at the Bilsk settlement, it was been established that Greek ceramics arrived at this settlement throughout of entire Scythian period, from the second half of the 7th to the end of the 4th century BC. At present, this is only one settlement in northern Black Sea region where such situation has been recorded. The assortment of Greek imports of eastern fortification and its barrows complexes of the Bilsk settlement suggest that the trade routes for the supply of goods have not changed since of the early Scythian time. This is confirmed by predominate of Olbia imports from the 4th century BC, with a small amount imports from Bosporus. At the same time, the delivery of goods was carried out by at least 3 trade routes, which were established in the previous period. Probably the importance of the Muravsky Way was which passed along the watershed of the Dnipro and Don is increasing. This road brought goods from the Bosporan kingdom and Chersonese to the Forest-Steppe, to the settlement of the Siversky Donets, as well as to the Bilsk Hillfort, based in the Vorskla river. Exports from the Forest-Steppe were diverse: cattle, furs, leather, honey, works. The Greeks could also receive it from the Forest-Steppe population and Scythian steppe inhabitants, slaves, captured in various military actions. Moreover, in the opinion of individual researchers, a role of the Scythian Greek slave trade increased especially by the 4th century BC. In addition, from the Forest-Steppe to Greek policy expected probably wheat. The Greeks supplied to local tribes or as products of their own production and acted as an intermediate distribution of autochthonous environment, the gods of the mainland and the island Hellas. In the steppe and the forest-steppe, Greeks selling wine and some food products and contained amphoras, tableware, jugs, often elegant ceramics and metal tableware, various decoration, including those made from prestigious metal by Hellenic Taurids, some pieces of ornament, in particular the ceremonial of the barbarian nobility distinguished by highly aristocratic level. Thus, we can make some conclusions from the Bilsk Hillfort. This settlement, which appeared in the second half of the 8th century BC, existed throughout the Scythian epoch from 7th to 4th century BC. The population was engaged in agriculture and cattle breeding, mastered various crafts, had complex ideological ideas. Already in the early period of its history, the settlement turned out to be the center of important trade and cultural contacts with sedentary tribes of Europe, nomads and Greek centers. New innovative ideas imports from the countries of ancient East and Europe come here. The local social elite was close to the Scythian aristocracy, enjoyed prestigious things, expensive imported goods, perhaps even related with the nomads. At the beginning of the 5th century BC, the ancient settlements has a regular layout, handicraft quarters, public buildings, and huge necropolises. A largest handicraft center on which various workshops are found, forge, bronze, pottery, bone carving. This is the only one settlement in Eastern Europe where a complex set of iron tools for various industries has been found. The smiths of ancient settlements in the 5th century BC produced about 50 types of products. A large trade center. Trade relations were carried out throughout the Scythian period from 7th to 4th in different directions, both with the east and west and Greek sides of the northern Black Sea region. The settlement was well known to the Greeks. All were remained the main trading painters for almost 3 centuries. Finding of objects which were used only by ethnic Greeks, fish plate, Greek lamps, coins, allow us to assume direct visit to the site of ancient Greeks merchants. It was the largest religious center on which public temples were built on the different details. Based on the materials of the excavation, it was possible that different layers of the population lived on the settlement. The top of the society was horse uh, warriors. As a result of gradual development, the settlement were turned into a major political center of the tribal union. The centralized management allows to maintain in order the defense structure, if necessary to organize timely protection of the population. All these facts allow us to say that the Bilsk Hillfort is the city of Helon, about Greek historian Herodotus was wrote. Today we cannot afford another, equal in scale to the settlement of the role of Herodotus Helon. Not all his secrets have been related. Every year we are presented with a new portion without an ingredient of unique sphinx. It should be noted that the largest collection of Bilsk Hillfort from the excavation are now stored in the Museum Archaeology Vasil Karazin, Kharkiv National University, and one of the showcases is dedicated to study of Bilsk settlement. Here you can find all the best artifacts which have been found in the ancient settlements. Thus, at present time, we could know many settlements of the Scythian epoch in Europe, but among them, Bilsk is unique. It stands out not only great sizes, but also many real materials, which give an idea of the most diverse aspects of the life and activities of the local population. In many cases, unique, varied findings indicate the high level of household development, exhaustive trade, and cultural relationship between the local residential, not only with the tribes of the Europe, but also from overseas countries. The ancient settlement data gave the urban type settlement with its advanced craft and trade. Currently, there are good reason to make the identification of the ancient settlement with Gelon city described in the fourth book of history by Herodotus. Thank you for your attention.